Questo romanzo è un po' come se fossero due romanzi, c'è il romanzo familiare, diciamo in qualche modo, e poi c'è il romanzo del bullismo, soprattutto del cyberbullismo. Come entrate in contatto con questa realtà e perché hai deciso di affrontare questo tema in maniera così specifica?
My starting point was, as always, a character. It was never a theme. And the first character I imagined was the character of the young boy, Daniel. And obviously after that his mother and father then began to become real characters to me. I knew that something very destructive had happened to this young boy, because the whole notion of suicide was something which had propelled my research, but I had no idea what the motive was until I began to write the story. And as the narrative developed, all sorts of pressures around teenagers became apparent to me. And the issue of bullying, and in particular of cyberbullying, began to grow organically from the narrative. So at the outset I had no idea what happens to Daniel. I just knew he was very distressed. But as the narrative began to develop, it became clear to me that this was something which fitted in with the story of a family in crisis that I wanted to tell. And so the two themes, if you like, then began to coalesce, the theme of family and the theme of cyberbullying.
Ecco, a proposito proprio del bullismo telematico, effettivamente a un certo punto Patrick ripensa sempre agli episodi di violenza tra ragazzi al suo college, però qui è qualcosa di diverso, l'impressione è che qui non siano solo le ragazzate, ma ci sia una violenza diversa rispetto a quella che può aver vissuto la generazione di Patrick a scuola, è così?
Yes, I mean, I think that bullying in previous generations was something which was easily identifiable. It could remain subtle and unseen only for a very short period of time. The violence in Patrick's case that he remembers from his school days is something which he was able to finish by breaking his tormentor's jaw. So it was a very physical type of bullying and a physical response. I think one of the things that has happened with the explosion, the revolution in social media, is the fact that it is now much easier to bully anonymously. And I think this is where my fear in particular lies. So many studies that I read have shown that ordinarily mild-mannered people will behave in a much more vicious and destructive way if they feel that they cannot be identified. So the bully in the schoolyard is one thing. You can see them, you know what they're at. And it is easier then to tackle whatever the issues are. But when something is being done anonymously, and is therefore gives license to other people, to a whole community of anonymous people to behave badly, it becomes a different issue, it becomes a bigger problem.
Nei suoi romanzi lei ha spesso raccontato il dolore all'interno delle famiglie, il dolore della separazione della coppia, anche i rapporti con i figli. Ecco, in questo caso però niente è paragonabile a questo dolore che arriva dall'esterno come un alieno. Ecco, l'impressione è che anche la famiglia sia assolutamente vulnerabile, totalmente vulnerabile di fronte a questo fenomeno del bullismo telematico.
Yes, I mean, I think that what gripped my imagination in this particular story, as I say, which was in part motivated by looking at suicide figures in my own country. Ireland, unfortunately, is quite high up there in the European League of young men in particular who take their own lives. I was very taken aback recently, and this was after the book was finished and even published here, that there have been several suicides of young females, driven to do so also by the topics that I discuss in the book. And even while I was writing it, it was just this sense of, while the internet is a wonderful source for research, for information, for communication, it is uncontrollable. There are aspects of it that we simply cannot have any kind of a grip on or any kind of a handle on. And it seems to me that while many young people navigate all of these waters with ease, and that they manage their social media, they manage their friendships, they manage everything, that there's also a group of very vulnerable young people who need to be protected, who need some sort of control put on these, what can be intrusions into their family life. And so for a novelist, that's that sense of something beyond, almost beyond recognition, something beyond our control. Our generation in particular is not as comfortable with the internet as our children and teenagers are, for example. We didn't grow up with it. And I read of so many young girls who, for example, would rather lose anything than lose their BlackBerry phones. They're the first things they listen to and look at in the morning, the first thing they do, the last thing they do in the evening. And so from a situation where we could exercise the access that our children had to the internet by, say, placing a computer in our living room, that's no longer possible because children travel with their mobile phones. They are connected at all times. So for me it was that sense of potential, the potential to be very good, a very good influence, and the potential to be a very destructive one. And for the purposes of the story, it was the destructive one that I wanted to look at.
Questa situazione intacca una famiglia. Ecco, in questa storia mi colpiva la figura ovviamente di Patrick, che ha 2 matrimoni, ha 2 esperienze con i figli. Nella prima in qualche modo non si accorge di essere un marito incapace di amare, insensibile forse anche verso la figlia, ma nella seconda parte, il secondo matrimonio, fa di tutto, si sforza, eppure fa di nuovo un secondo errore. La sua seconda possibilità è drammatica esattamente come la prima.
I don't know that I would see it like that as his creator. I think certainly in his first relationship, Patrick, at the start of the narrative, I think, yes, he's a very selfish man. He's a very self-absorbed man. He almost loses his first wife and daughter because of his selfish behaviour. And he goes through fatherhood in many ways not really realising the gift that he has. When he loses his wife, he understands for the first time profoundly what it is to grieve, what it is to need somebody and to miss them. With his second relationship, he does what many people do, I think, in those circumstances. He feels that he has been given a second chance and he wants to do better. And I believe he does do better. He does better as a husband, and he certainly does better as a father. And he feels blessed that he has been given the opportunity of having a son. Where his fatal flaw is, if you like, is that sense of wanting the charmed life that he believes he has, wanting that life to continue. There is an inability in him to recognise the fact that something is wrong, and he has an opportunity, which he will probably regret for the rest of his life, to speak to his son, to accept the fact that things aren't right, to stop denying the fact that there are problems. And he doesn't take that opportunity. But I do believe that by the end of the book that he is a more sensitive, a more self-aware and a more loving man than he is at the beginning.